welcome everyone. It's great to see so many members joining us tonight. Sad that we can't see you, but I can see the numbers joining, which is fantastic. We'll just start with some introductions, a bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get straight into the training session because we've got a lot to cover and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming from you all. So my name is Emma Holland-Lindsay. I'm Head of Public Affairs here at the WI. I'm going to be handing over to our trainer Phil for most of this session today, but just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So firstly, you will have seen that we are recording this session. We're going to be uploading it onto my WI and also onto YouTube. So just wanted to make you aware of that. You should have had a notification when you joined. Please do feel free to share it with your fellow members once we've got the links up, and we will share those once it's uploaded. And secondly, we've got about an hour for this session, which should allow us some time for questions towards the end. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please type it into the Q&A question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. Don't wait to do that, because often we find we get inundated with them at the end of the session. So anything that springs to mind, put it in that question box and we'll try and cover it as best we can at the end. So firstly, I'd like to introduce our trainer today, Phil Clayton. You should be able to see him on screen. It's been a real pleasure for us to work with Phil on the development of our modern slavery campaign, and particularly over the last few months as we've been talking about training for WI members. Phil's got a huge track record in this area. He's been working with victims of human trafficking and modern slavery for over 10 years. And he's currently head of development at a modern slavery charity called City Hearts, who we've been in contact with as part of the WI campaign. And through his work there, he worked to set up one of the first male safe houses in the UK to support survivors. He also sits on the Greater Manchester Serious Organised Crime Challenger Board, and led the way in establishing the Merseyside Anti-Slavery Network. So he's got a really big track record to tell us all about and teach us all about how to spot the signs of modern slavery today. It feels very kindly giving up his time to run this session. So we're extremely grateful for that. So thank you, Phil. I'd also like to welcome Rosie, who's here going to be starting the session with Phil and telling us a little bit more about her experiences of domestic servitude. So thank you so much, Rosie. We really appreciate you being here today. And we know it can't be easy always to talk about these things, but your insights, I'm sure, will be really useful. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Phil. We look forward to a fantastic session. Thank you both.
Great, thanks very much. Really good to be here. And if we can pop the slides up and we'll work through that. I'm gonna just give a bit of an overview of where we're going to go to. So I'm going to give an overview of some modern slavery statistics, just to give you a picture of what's happening in the UK, what the trends are, and then we'll chat to Rosie. And I think I want to give some good time to hearing Rosie's story. I've been working with Rosie, maybe for 4 years now, 5 years, something like that. And, you know, just been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to do your journey with you, and to be a small part of seeing you kind of find your voice. And I'm really excited to have you here today. So thank you so much for giving up your time and being here. And then we'll look at the journey of a victim of modern slavery, and I'll cover in that who identifies victims, where are they, how do they get removed or rescued from their situations of exploitation, and then what happens after that, what support is available, what does the government offer, and what are the needs and gaps there in terms of integration into society again. And then looking at some of the signs. I've got a video to show around some of the signs of slavery. And then the key question here is, well, if we spot a sign, then what do we do with that? So what happens after we share a sign? And we've got another video there from a training that I've done for the Trustful Trust of a senior investigating officer who puts together modern slavery investigations, and he's sharing his insight on an operation that he put together, which relied very heavily on information and collaboration from the public. And so that's kind of where we're going. And then it will move quite fast, because I think the question and answer session, I love engaging with that. So echo what Emma said, do pop your questions in. If something springs to mind, you think, oh, I just want to know a bit more about that, or I didn't quite understand that, or, you know, any questions you're bringing, don't wait, pop them in the chat and they can begin to collate them. So just a bit of an overview then. So we go to the next slide. So what and where is modern slavery? So the definition of modern slavery is there on the screen. It's the recruitment, the movement, and the harboring or receiving of women, men, and children and families through the use of force, coercion, abuse of vulnerability, deception, or other means for the purpose of exploitation. So that's kind of the legal definition of modern slavery, human trafficking. And you can see there on the screen, this is the where victims of modern slavery have been identified all over the country. And you can see there that the largest area is London, with over 1,000 victims being identified in London last year. And so just to say, modern slavery is everywhere. It's all over the UK, and victims are being identified everywhere. So we can go to the next slide. So just a few kind of overview statistics, just to give sort of a bit of a scene there. So female victims, both adults and children, remain the highest in the sexual exploitation type. Interestingly, the majority of people have not been exploited elsewhere. Exploitation 58% of the time happens in the UK. So it's happening here. There is an estimated 136,000 victims of modern slavery in the UK today. And we as a country, we identify and rescue less than 10% of the estimated number of slaves. So less than 10%. Figures for 21 on identification came out just today, actually, and it's up slightly from last year. So just over 12,000 victims being identified last year, just over 10,000 the year before. It's still a small fraction of the 136,000 that are estimated to be in the UK. And British victims are the highest number of victims in the UK. Highest number being recognised and removed from slavery. And then the next two highest are Albanian and Vietnamese victims. So we go to the next slide. These are the figures from 20. So in 2020, you can see Albanians was the highest number of victims identified, and then British, and then Sudanese. And so that's switched this year, from the figures from last year in 21. Now British victims are at the top of that list, and then underneath that you have Albanian and Vietnamese. The figures from 21, I've updated these from the presentation I did earlier this week, but 50% are adults and 43% are children, and there's some that when the figures come in don't identify. So then you have 23% of those adults are women, and 77% of those adults are men. So that is last year. Well, in 2020 it was close to 50-50, although men still slightly higher. But this year, from 21, that swung right up to 77% being male, and that is mainly around labor exploitation. And this is a growing trend and a growing threat over the last 2 years. And the figures from last year only exacerbate that labor exploitation is a continuing and growing issue in the country today. We can go to the next slide. So just a bit of context there. Now I'd like to introduce Rosie. And I mean, the reason why I've been working in this field, in this sector for over 10 years is because I still remember the first time I met the first person who I'd ever come across who'd been exploited. And there's just those moments in your life that are just kind of lines in the sand. And I just knew from that point onwards that this is not something that's a career move or a job. This is something that, modern slavery is horrendous, and it's the most horrible crime where, if you traffic drugs, you traffic the drugs in and you sell them, and then you have to go get more drugs. When you traffic a person in, you can use them again and again and again and again and again. And it's, I knew then for the rest of my life that I'm going to be working on this issue and trying to rescue and restore as many people as I could. And having the privilege of working with Rosie. So Rosie, thanks so much for being here. Just talk a bit about your life now. What are you doing? What's your job? What do you like to do? Hobbies, interests? Just paint a little picture of who you are, Rosie.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. Sorry, today a little bit my throat is not good, so apologies for this. It's sorry, it's a weather, might be. So yeah, so At the moment, I'm working with the co-op and doing small job there as a customer team member, and serving community and doing some projects of like your store, your say, and membership. So little bit awareness, and it's this job really give me a boost, and I am financially secure, and the team is very wonderful. Managers are good. My colleagues are really lovely, and especially the community. It's really a kind of something experience which is really made my life.
And how long have you
And
been working with the co-op now? How long is that now? I can't remember.
it's my 4th year now with them.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that because it's really first time I work with the supermarket, and I didn't know that it will work out like that, and I will be there in the heart of the place, because the place is near the colleges and universities and offices and community passerbyers.
Amazing.
So it's really very good experience. So it's a
tell us a little
wonderful.
bit. Tell us a little bit about what you do outside of work. Then, what are your other?
Yeah, outside of work, I go to church, and I have some friends from community, from church. Cooking is my passion. I think most of the people know that. So I love to cook and love to feed sometime, because in these 2 years, because of COVID, we were divided into very small groups. But now, thank God, restrictions are lifted, and the friends from the past, they are contacting via each other, and doing. And sometime I like to do some like volunteer work as well, and doing some courses as well. So like this, I pass my time.
Busy. And I said this at the last meeting, but absolutely, if you need someone to cook for a WI event, Rosie is an incredible cook. And many a staff meeting Rosie brought in, and I remember every time Rosie was like, Phil, you must come over, we must have food, I'll cook for you. So hospitality is one of Rosie's real strengths and has blessed so many people. Rosie, just take us back, because I know that was a long time ago now, was over 6-7 years ago, that you were in London, and as we've just seen on the slide, that London is a real hotspot for victims of modern slavery. So just tell us what situation were you in London those years ago?
Actually, a couple of years before I came to London for the sake of my life, or something like looking forward future, like that, and I end up with a family. Who eventually they offer me a job of nanny for their children. But after a couple of years working for them, I realized that I've been cheated. And when I asked them the reason why they did with me this thing, and I confront them, after that they became very horrible. And they exploit me, they abuse me physically, mentally, and they use all of their sources and things to don't let me to escape. So I tried to come out from all this, but it was very hard for me. That time was very difficult.
And what brought you to the UK in the first place? Why was it that you came here?
Actually, back home is a relationship broke down, and some threats were coming. And sorry, I thought that if I go to UK, and then might be, I will settle there or have some life. Actually, it was for my life. Actually, I thought that this is a safe country. So, but I didn't know that it will end up like that.
And so you're in London, and you were looking for a place to stay, and this family offered you a job. Just tell us a bit more about that situation and how that escalated.
Actually, I was looking some place to live there as a tenant or lodger. So one of the guy from a shop, they put their like small, that they have a room for. So I went there, and I spoke to them, and they said, okay, you can stay with us and pay rent and whatever the the formalities. And after that, because they were from my back home as well, they have some links there, and they knew our language was same, little bit culture. They were British people, but they have. So they offered me a nanny job, and which was, I thought that it will be a good for me, that because they have children and one was disabled child, and so I thought if I can go with them and have with these children as well, I can have a good time, and slowly I will understand. And I didn't know anything about the immigration and things, because I came from alien country for the so, but initially they said that I have to just take care of the children and school run or something like that. But slowly they put all the pressure of house cleaning, keeping, gardening, stitching their clothes, washing, and they, above all, they uh, forced me to go out and do work and pay them rent. And for my as well, for my little bit things what I need of my requirements, they said that I have to pay them. So I started paying them and working for them, and evening time cleaning jobs, or sometime people cleaning or gardening like that. Anyway, it was very hard. They didn't let me to take rest, and that day I didn't mention that they didn't allow me to put heating on. uh, they kept me in very dark and very damp place. When I come home, everything was off and I was not allowed. I was so scared, because if I say something, they always says everything is very expensive, and if I little bit more argue with them, then they ask more money, which I was not able to do. And especially they make me like that, like they make my name bad as well when I confronted them into the community society, that she's a bad woman, and people started boycotting me, and they thought that I'm not a good woman. And a time came when they stopped selling food to me.
Wow. And
So
so
it
why?
was yeah.
Sorry, I was just
Sorry.
going to say, you're in that situation for a number of years, and you I think you tried to get out a few times. Why could you not sort of get away? Why couldn't you leave?
Especially because the husband and wife together, they kept not only kept an eye over me, and but also they check where I go, and they ask me. It was a controlling situation, and most of the time they go with me. And secondly, they don't allow me to make any friend. I was not allowed to call anyone for just a cup of tea, or I was not allowed to talk with people. And if I say something, they said that they will not send my paper to the home office, or like they will not let me settle here. So it was a proper threats. So I was so scared, because slowly in all these years, I got weak, and I was slowly, because they didn't let me to see television as well. So I didn't know what's going on in UK or in this world or anything. And they, especially if they go out, they lock the room, TV room, so that I can't see in their absence. Or even a time came when even they stopped lock the room. But I was that scared, and that slavery in my mind, that much, that I don't go and on that telly, that might be they come and they see me, and that kind of fear they put into my heart, that I stopped touching things and like this. And so it was so cruel behavior. It's a long story, couple of years.
Wow.
Thank you, all of you are listening and understanding, and feel always give me chance to raise my voice, more or less. So
So how did you end up getting out then? How did you escape?
yeah, actually they were abusing their children as well, and the social services involved those days. So I told them that I was slave there, and if they can save these children. I didn't know about my future, and I will get some sport in my life or something. I thought it will be might be end of my life sometime, but at least they can save their children. So I was a witness what was going on for their children at home there. But social services, thank God, they look at me as well. I thought because I had no status, no family, no money, nothing, might be no one will ask me here in this country, and yeah, so I was completely hopeless. Yeah.
And so then you came to City Hearts. So just tell us, what sort of support did you get from City Hearts?
Yeah, actually, it's still I am on City Heart Sport, I would say. But in all these years, they really built me up, and I am. They let me to back on my few feet on and gain my confidence and trust in me. And sports started from Safe House actually. I've been to Safe House and welcomed very warmly, and there were some ladies like me there as well. So I felt that we are like a kind of belonging. Caseworkers and sport workers were around me, and after a couple of days when they saw I'm little bit, because my health was very bad, so when I felt better, they brought me to one of their sport program drop-in, which is really lovely. I would say still I have very good memories, because I understand how to make friends there or even to communicate there, and I felt that I was free woman, and there were other people coming from other organizations, and they take care of us, look at us, and City Heart Sport Worker, they gave us chance to improve some skills as well. So there was some laughs, some food, and that couple of hours, one day in a week, we all, I myself, I forgot from where I was. So I was really, it's a transformation time. I would say a couple of months in Safe House, and drop in. I kept on going couple of years, you know. So it really changed my life.
So
And yeah, and furthermore, because everyone knew that I was in cooking, so they offer me some it's a training program. I would say it's a um, one of it's an ingredient of life, and I learned some cooking skills there, and then I got job through Bright Future program, which is
good.
really amazing. Yeah.
Rosie, like every time I chat to you, every time I hear your story, it just gets me. It's you're incredible, and you're an inspiration, to me and to everybody. And I'm, that you talk to. I know that you bring light and life into every room and space, and food usually into every space that you come into. So just finally to finish off, there's many women on this call today, and what would you say to people who, maybe people are in this sort of abusive situations, or maybe know people, or what would be your message to women today?
It's my second day with all of you guys, and in this training, I understand that how much slavery is here in the UK, and it's very sad to know that so many men and women and children are in the UK and coming from other countries. So it's a message from me that for every woman, that every person who is listening my voice, that never ever give up, don't lose their hope, keep on trying, and we are in safe hands, and we are future, and be positive, and always see that there is a light. If the person like me who was really broken, it's just a word, broken life, I heard. But when I saw, when I felt that I was a broken lady, if I transform into this, such a beautiful, you know, still I am struggling with a couple of things, but City Heart and my job place and people who know me from my church, they are supporting me. But if I can go for this, that everyone, every person, you know, just go on.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing not only your story, but your passion to see other people, overcome and become beautiful, in your words. And I think that's incredible. So if we were an audience here, we'd all be clapping and applauding and standing to our feet. You're incredible. So thank you, Rosie. And I know, Rosie, you're going to stay around, and if there are any questions specifically to Rosie, or just comments or anything you want to say, you can, we can do that at the end as well. So that's great. So thanks, Rosie. If we bring back the slides, I'll kind of come out of interview mode and just give a kind of overview, as I was saying, of the journey of a victim of modern slavery in the UK. So it starts with vulnerability, and that vulnerability can be can be a number of things. It can be it could be a lack of economic stabilities in their own country, no job, which brings people over here. Vulnerability could be, as Rosie said, not having control of your identity documents, or not understanding, immigration and people using that. Vulnerability could be poverty. So there could be a number of vulnerabilities that kind of cause people to move into a situation of exploitation, and that situation is sometimes not obvious at first. Many of the survivors that I've worked with don't realize they're victims, or don't realize what's happening to them, such as the coercion or the web of lies that's been spun around them. They don't realize what's happening to them. So there's a vulnerability that then people move into situations of exploitation. And modern slavery, human trafficking has a movement element to it. Now, this movement element does not have to be cross-border. It doesn't have to be from one country to another. Movement can be from one street to another, or from one house to another, as is the case with another rising threat in the UK, county lines, which is forcing or coercing children to move drugs and guns from one county to the next county. So there's movement aspect. Then the movement results in, and if you remember back to the definition, the movement is for the purpose of exploitation. So then there's the act of exploitation, and that there are different types of exploitation. So you've got labor exploitation. We go to the next slide just quickly, then I can just go through. So you've got labor exploitation, sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, and then domestic servitude, and then the sort of complex and multiple unknown types of exploitation. There's always emerging types of exploitation as this crime evolves and moves. But broadly speaking, you've got labor, sexual, criminal, and domestic servitude. And you can see there that labor exploitation, from the figures earlier, it is a common and growing type and threat. And so examples of labor exploitation might be car washes, might be farms, people forced to work in factories, chicken catching, picking or packing fruit and eggs. These are all types of labor exploitation. Sexual exploitation, pop-up brothels is a common type of sexual exploitation, street working, and online sexual exploitation as well. Criminal activity, as I mentioned, county lines, but then there's also criminal activity, people being forced to commit crimes, but they may be treated as perpetrators, but they're actually victims. So they may be being forced to commit fraud or to commit theft. Cannabis farming is a common type of criminal exploitation, and also forced begging. Domestic servitude, as Rosie talked about there, is where someone is lured into a situation where they're kept inside a house and used for domestic chores. Often this is around short-term visas that are offered, and then those visas expire, but people are kept in those houses. If we go back to the previous slide, we can pick up the journey there. So people in this exploitation, and then there's an identification. So there are there's a way that people are identified. So signs are spotted, investigations are done, and people are removed from slavery. But identification broadly happens by three sort of top kind of groups of organization. The Home Office identify the most number of victims of modern slavery in the UK today, and they do that mainly through people coming into the country, but also through other immigration activities, but also enforcement activities that the Home Office do, checks that the Home Office do, and they identify signs of modern slavery. And then you've got law enforcement, so the police and investigative bodies, including the Gang Masters, Labour and Licensing Abuse Authority, who we'll hear from the senior investigator later in the video. And then legal advisors, so solicitors, lawyers, identify a lot of victims of slavery as well. when they're identified, there is a national support system. So the government do plough millions of pounds. It's roughly between 20 and 30 million pounds at the moment. When I started, it was 2 to 5 million pounds, and it's growing and growing and growing as referrals are growing and growing every year, year on year, referrals into the government support system, which is called the National Referral Mechanism. It's a name that really doesn't describe what it does, but it is a support system that covers the whole country. It's a network of safe houses and community support that's available to survivors. It's only available within certain criteria and for certain periods of time, and there is no consistent national ongoing long-term support for survivors. And this is one of the biggest gaps in survivor support, is that integration and that long-term journey back into society that Rosie's been talking about, where you find a job, where you find friends, where you find community. And there may be alongside that investigations, criminal or civil investigations, and also compensation, that these things go on for years and require support alongside them. And that is missing in the UK at the moment. So many survivors, after government support, left without any support. If we go to the next slide, or if you jump to the slide after that, so we'll look at what are the signs now. So that's kind of the journey. So we just jump back to the identification piece. So what are the signs? What do the signs look like inside these different types of modern slavery, so criminal labor? Let's have a look at the video now. So if we can go for the technical wizardry and play that. So signs come under 3 categories: appearance, behavior, and control. So as you're watching this video now, look out for those: appearance, behavior, and control across these different situations. So yeah, go ahead and play the video. stop that there. That's great. Thanks very much. So a number of different signs there of what modern slavery might look like in the context, and some of those brackets around the appearance of someone's behavior, and then those elements of control. Those are the main areas where signs are spotted. Obviously, signs are different for each type of modern slavery, but you're looking at things like, you know, clothing, untreated injuries, hygiene, people are appearing afraid or anxious, and there are many different situations and circumstances. So what do you do? And you saw there at the end of the video there, what do you do if you have a concern, if you have a niggle, or if you're not sure, you see something on your street, or you see something in, you know, somewhere where you're volunteering, maybe you're volunteering in a food bank or another frontline service in the community, and you see something, someone's behavior changes, or there's something that's not quite right, and you feel concerned, you think this person, you know, might be being exploited or might not be in full control of their life. So what do? The best thing to do is to share that information anonymously with the Modern Slavery Helpline. And we've got a slide with the Modern Slavery Helpline on it. If we don't need to put that up now, I'll pop it in the chat so you've got that, but it's just modernslaveryhelpline.org. And this is a team of experts, trained experts, who are there for any inquiry or information about modern slavery. So they will, you can speak to them on the phone, it's completely anonymous, or you can do, and I do this quite frequently, just go on their website and do an online form, completely anonymous, just put that information there, and then they anonymously filter that information in the same way that the Neighbourhood Watch do with their systems, or Crime Watch do, exactly the same way. Sorry, Crime Stoppers, not Crime Watch. So the same systems that Crime Stoppers and Neighbourhood Watch use in terms of anonymizing that data and information, then that's how the Modern Slavery Helpline do that. So you won't be identified, personal information won't be identified, but that information about what you're seeing can help build up a picture and bring into focus what's happening in a particular area. And it may result in law enforcement being able to put some resources onto making some arrests or putting together a case and removing people. But it comes from little bits of information. So, I mean, this is an overview training. This is not an in-depth training. So we're not creating experts here in modern slavery. But if you can have an understanding of what some of the signs might look like in your context, and go away from this training a bit inspired and motivated to find out some more and to look into some more things and gain some more knowledge. And there are other training courses that you can go on as well to go in a bit more detail. But it's about those little bits of information that build up that piece and that picture that enables action to happen that removes people from slavery. And that's what we're going to hear about now in this next video. Martin Plimmer, who's a senior investigating officer for the GLAA. The GLAA rescue thousands and thousands of slaves all over the country every single year. And he leads on those investigations. He recently led on the investigation that you may have seen in the news about Chris, who was a slave for 40 years and kept in a shed in someone's back garden. He led on that investigation. He's going to talk to us now about an investigation that he put together. So yeah, we can go ahead and play that.
My name's Martin Plimmer. I work for the Gang Masters and Labour Abuse Authority, and my role within the organisation is I'm a senior investigating officer. We're an organisation that we look at labour exploitation in the main. We look at victims who have been exploited for various reasons: modern slavery, human trafficking, any allegations that come in as regards modern slavery, exploitation. I lead on the investigation, so I decide on whether we're going to investigate it, what resources we allocate to it, etc. So all the way through an investigation, I have oversight of it and decide what's happening with it. We had an area in the West Midlands, and I won't go into too much detail because it might identify people, but initially we had a report of a house in a town, and people were seen carrying in a number of mattresses into a house. So on the face of it, you would think, well, you know, what is that concerned with? But for one of the indicators of modern slavery is we have houses of multiple occupancy. So people will be crammed into a house, they'll be sleeping on mattresses, sharing mattresses, and they will be exploited. They'll be paid, you know, charged lots of money for living in squalid conditions that you or I wouldn't live in. So that was the first piece of intelligence. So mattresses being carried into a house. So we looked at that. We looked at the address. And when we checked with the police, there were what's called flags to that address. There were already intelligence indicators. At the same time, we had a call from a food bank that was attached to a local church in the vicinity. And they said, we're really concerned. We've been running a food bank. And they said, but what we're seeing happening is we've seen minibuses pulling up and somebody seems to be organising and directing the people to come into the food bank. So they're being pushed and shouted at. So we asked them to, if they could record the registration numbers of the vehicles that were coming. They towed back to the house that we were already looking at. And all the pieces started to click together. We did a period of surveillance and we found out that 40 people were living in a terraced house, a 3-bedroom house, which included young children. But it was people within the food bank who were seeing people on a daily basis. And when we traced it back, they were saying, I saw a change in the people as well. This lady and her family had been coming in for a number of weeks. I saw that suddenly she'd gone very quiet. She used to chat. She didn't chat anymore. So all these indicators just led to somebody to pick up a phone and say, I'm really concerned. And that one piece of the jigsaw fitted to another piece, which fitted to another piece, and resulted in 20 plus people being rescued from a life of slavery. So, you know, you can't get better than that.
I'm David Dallimore.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much. So that's Martin, who's a senior investigating officer you saw there, and he puts together these operations. So that's how he brings together that information, and that information leads to one thing to the next thing, growing resource as the information grows. And then, as you said there, I know what drives Martin is what drives many of us in the sector is to identify and actually rescue and remove people from that situation so they can begin their journey of recovery. So if we go to the slide that talks about if you're spotting a sign, so we'll put the Modern Slavery Helpline up there on the screen. So so this is something you need to write down. This is the phone number, and then that's the website there. I've also put on just at the bottom there, City Hearts, as I mentioned, I work for them, and Rosie was supported by them. But tomorrow, City Hearts are doing another event that you might be interested in. It's during the day, it's between 11 and 12. I'll put the link in the chat in a second, but it's a public behind the scenes webinar on the recent case of Chris, who was that British man from Cumbria who was a slave for 40 years. So we've got another investigator from the GLAA, the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, and the support worker who worked with Chris for over 3 years in his recovery. So if you want to know, again, a bit more about this modern slavery and what it's like, come behind the scenes tomorrow between 11 and 12. We are recording that, so it will be available afterwards as well. I'll end there because I know we've got some questions coming in and I want to leave time for that as well. So Emma, back over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Phil. That was fantastic. And I just think, particularly that last part, just really reminded me that actually this is something that we can all make a difference on in our own lives. You know, we are all seeing, whether we notice it or know what to spot, we're all seeing modern slavery, I think. And I do think those tiny things we can do, maybe fill out a form, make a phone call, can actually make a really big difference. So thank you so much for that. I think it was really, really fantastic. And I also just wanted to thank you, Rosie, for sharing your story again with us. You might see in the chat, we've had a comment from Anne Jones, who is our national chair of the WI, who's watching tonight. And I think she sort of sums up certainly how I feel. I'm sure all the other members on the call do, just to thank you for bravely sharing your story tonight. And it has reminded all of us what we're campaigning for. So thank you so much, Rosie. We really deeply appreciate it. I'm just going to move on to the questions. And if it's okay with you, Rosie, my first one is to you, actually. We had a member just asking sort of how you feel now reliving your experiences. You know, do they still affect you? How does it feel to be talking to us tonight about what you went through?
Actually, it's a kind of journey, you know, I led a couple of years in slavery and now a couple of years for recovery. Sometimes I think might be that was a dream, and sometimes I think this is a dream. So it really affected me too much, to be very honest. I was on counseling for 4 years. And still sometimes I feel that I need someone to listen to me. So it not only affected my brain, it also affected my life. I lost my family because of this slavery. City Heart and British Red Cross, they are working on it. So for me, it's hard to say that I came out and everything is all right and perfect. No, things are good. Sport is here. Acceptance is here. Positivity is here. So I would say that might be I am resilient. So I'm a survivor and I survived. So I'm very thankful for everything today and last time you people give me chance to share my story. So it's badly affected my life, you know, but I'm positive and I believe in growing.
Thank you, Rosie. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure my fellow members would think the same. You know, you have really inspired us and reminded us this issue is so important. So we thank you so much for sharing your story, and we hope you continue to go from strength to strength. And we're glad that you found City Hearts. So thank you so much. We've got lots of questions to get through, Phil. So I'm going to throw them over to you next. So first question we've got, which is from Marion, asking about how we compare in the UK with other countries in terms of identifying and finding, victims of modern slavery.
That is an excellent question, and I'm going to be absolutely honest and say I don't know. I don't even know if there is a comparable statistical mechanism. Like the main sources of data come from the national referral mechanism. So when people are identified and referred for support, so that sort of 12,000 figure that I mentioned, that's the biggest data source we have. NRM, there are equivalent systems in other countries, but they track data in different ways, and so they don't all track the same types of data. So I've not actually come across research on that comparable. So that might actually be an area of need to sort of look into. But I don't know how we compare off the top of my head, or if there are actually those comparative figures out there. I don't know if that work's been done. So I might take that away as a piece of work to do.
Sounds good. We're always happy to identify new areas to work on. Thank you. That's really helpful. Got a couple of questions around particular sort of settings, which I'm going to take together because I'm kind of conscious of time. So we've got one question, which is from Trish, who has asked about how do we go about identifying slavery in begging? So, if you see someone begging on the street, how do you know whether they are, being kept in modern slavery of some form? And then Lorraine has mentioned nail bars, saying that, staff working in there maybe don't speak English. She's tried to ask them questions about things like holidays. They look well dressed and very friendly, but just feels that maybe there's something might be going on there. So I wonder if you could just pick up on those 2 points, so begging and nail bars. Yeah,
no, I think it's great and it's an excellent question, and I think I'd pick up here on something that is really key. I don't see it as my job. It's definitely not your job to spot modern slavery. It's not your job. You're not there to spot modern slavery. Spot a sign and share a sign, but obviously the sign, it could be something or it could be nothing. In terms of, when you're looking at begging or nail bars, if you have that feeling or that concern of this person just doesn't, there's something that's not right, I think it might be modern slavery. That's enough for you to submit a piece of information anonymously to the Modern Slavery Helpline, because remember what Martin said, that it's not about any one piece of information. If you submit a piece of information about, there's a gentleman who's begging, who's in this location, and you feel that he might be being exploited, then that's enough, because that might already be being flagged. That street might be known by another authority for some other criminal activity. So I would encourage you to not try and identify modern slavery, but just if you've got a concern and you think it might be, then share that information anonymously with Modern Slavery Helpline, and then they will feed that in. And as Martin said, it builds up a picture that's then acted on. And the same with the nail bars. I would say don't investigate, don't try and sort of gather information. If you've got a concern based on your knowledge of, hey, I think this could be a sign of modern slavery, then that is something you can share through the Modern Slavery Helpline and let other people, let the experts build the picture and take the action.
That's great. Thanks, Phil. Thank you very much for that. On a sort of similar note, I think maybe we've touched on it, but just so we're clear, so Sue has mentioned in the chat that she saw something strange on Rightmove. So it was a house that had an outbuilding with several kind of cubicle rooms, a kitchen and a toilet. She reported it to the Modern Slavery Helpline, but they said they couldn't do anything. Will that still be held as a flag on some kind of record somewhere in case further evidence comes up?
I can't speak for the Modern Slavery Helpline in terms of what they would or would do in any particular situation, but my experience is that they send on information to the most appropriate agency, whether that is environmental health or whether that's housing standards or whether that is the police. They are trained to send that information to the right place. The Modern Slavery Helpline themselves are not an action force. They don't take direct action. I wouldn't. So I'd say that they would be, that information would go somewhere. If you go on the Modern Slavery Helpline website, you can look at their reports, and you can see detailed breakdown of what the calls are, what areas people, what things people are calling about, and they do detailed infographic reports, I think quarterly, so you can have a much more detailed understanding of what is going to the helpline and what they're doing with it.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. On a slightly different note, Angela has asked, and this is actually from her WI, she's obviously talked to her WI about this, attending this session, so thanks for doing that, Angela. Are the people reported to the Modern Slavery Helpline at risk of then being potentially deported? Does the helpline pass on their details to the Home Office?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that does come up, and this question came up, I think the other day as well. And so the National Referral Mechanism is a separate system of support. It is run by the government, but it is separate to the immigration sort of system. And so people who are in the NRM and being considered as potential victims of modern slavery, that decision is separate to the decision that is being made about any other immigration status. But people who go into the NRM eventually have to, the support ends, as I've said, and that is one of the areas that City Hearts works on, and that I've fervently worked on over the last 8 years, is working with those survivors after they leave the NRM. And that's where their immigration status does come into play. So they may have to return home, and I've helped survivors repatriate successfully and integrate, connect them with support, and then some go on and integrate into this society. And there are ways that you can apply for asylum or discretionary leave. There are different routes, and that's kind of what charities help victims to be able to do. But in terms of if we share something, is there a chance that someone's going to get deported? You don't know what happens with that information, and I can't sit here and say no, nobody's going to get deported because of that. The information is there, but what I know is that the people that I've worked with, and that's hundreds of survivors over the years, is that they would much rather be out of their situation of exploitation than in their situation of exploitation. And there are many mechanisms that I've helped people support with. So it won't necessarily lead to deportation, but I can't sit here and say it won't, but I can say that that's how the system works. It is separate. It supports people based on their needs and what their experiences are, and helps them to recover as best as possible. Thanks, Phil. That's really helpful.
Just got 2 more questions. I'm conscious of time. So Marion has asked about, her question is, are there a substantial number of organised slavery gangs in comparison to things like individual family domestic servitude. So I think she's probably trying to sort of get at, you know, how many survivors or victims are coming through organised crime, are being exploited in that way, how many are maybe being exploited on a kind of individual basis.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's hard again to say, because the data doesn't kind of capture that, and that's hard data to capture and to analyze. But from my experience, and as Emma mentioned, I, you know, specifically working around Greater Manchester Combined Authority, there are many organised crime groups that operate various different criminal activity, and often is the case that it's not just somebody being used for you know, in a car wash. I've worked with people who they work in the car wash during the day, then at the weekends they're forced to open bank accounts with fake IDs. So there's forced criminality and forced labour going on, and that's being organised. In that case, it was organised by an Albanian OCG. So yeah, that I can't say a direct comparison. I can't say there's more OCGs than there are individuals, but there are definitely both on a scale operating across the UK.
Great, thanks, Phil. That's really useful. And then final question, which is very apt, I think, from Susan, who asks, how can we help as a WI? Yeah,
I think you know, what being here is a great way to help. I think having the campaign is an excellent way to help, and Emma and she'll know this, that I'm committed to sort of helping educate and train around modern slavery and the signs, and then what to do in an effective way. And I think, if you know, any way that you can resource yourself and grow in your knowledge and information, not only around the signs but around modern slavery itself and the various mechanisms that can help survivors. Volunteering, getting involved with those organizations that are helping victims directly. There are 14-15 major organizations which are supporting hundreds of survivors. City Hearts supports 800 survivors at the moment across the north of England, and so there are you know, there are organizations that will be operating in your region for sure, that will have, like Rosie talked about, drop-ins perhaps, where volunteers can go and, you know, be alongside survivors, helping with craft or play with the children and facilitate skills sessions. So I'd encourage you to seek out those. Just do a Google modern slavery charities and then see which ones are in your region, and then just contact them. Info at, usually as an email, and just say, hey, I went to this amazing training session by Phil Clayton. Please, can you tell me how to volunteer? But yeah, volunteer, and then obviously donations. You know, like charities, as you know, like need those donations to support victims. And you know, one of the you know, there are many gaps that the government do not fund for victims, and one of the biggest needs is that ongoing support beyond what the government fund, that actually really sees people come into true freedom and be able to turn their past story into their future purpose, as Rosie is doing. There's that past pain, but she's determined that it will not own her or control it. It will help other people, and that is really the long-term journey. And it's such a privilege to work with City Hearts to be able to carry on working with survivors in that long-term journey. So I'd say donations into those key areas where support is not funded by the government is another crucial way that you can support. But volunteering, donations, yeah, I think that's great.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Phil. So it's 1 minute to 8. I think we're going to have to bring it to a close, but it's been an absolutely fantastic session. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure my fellow WI members will have done so too. So thank you so much, Phil, for giving us your time today and developing this training session. It's been really, really interesting, and I know members will be going away inspired and knowing what they can do to help tackle this issue locally. So we really, really appreciate you. And similarly, Rosie, thank you so much again for joining us this second time to share your experiences. It's been really, really powerful and really, really engaging, and we applaud you. So thank you so much. So I'm going to bring the session to a close. Thank you, members, for coming along. This is being recorded, so you can watch it again. Please do feel free to share it with your WIs and federations. We'd love as many as possible to watch it. And just to flag, once you exit the webinar, you will get our evaluation survey, and we'd love it if you can just take 2 minutes to let us know what you thought of the session afterwards so that we can help develop future work. So thank you so much, Phil. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you everyone for coming along, and we'll finish it there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.